Today, two Senate leaders on budget issues. Oklahoma, Republican Tom Coburn, and from Missouri, Democrat Claire McCaskill. Senators, let's start with the big question, quick answer. Will the sequester happen? Will those $85 billion in spending cuts kick in on Friday? Senator Coburn.
Yes, it will, and it's not $85 billion because it's a pro rata portion of that till the end of this year, so it won't be a full $85 billion.
But it's going to kick in.
It will kick in, but at a pro rata rate, so you're not going to see $85 billion all of a sudden shrink from the federal government.
We're going to get to that in a second. Senator McCaskill, do you agree it's going to happen?
Well, unless the Republicans are willing to compromise and do a balanced approach, I think it will kick in. I'm a little confused about the Republican position at this point. It appears that Speaker Boehner doesn't have any kind of bill that he can even put on the floor of the House that could pass within his caucus, and I think there is a little bit of a civil war that's broken out among the Republican ranks.
Wait a minute, Senator McCaskill. The fact is the House has passed two measures to replace the sequester cuts with other spending cuts, equal in size, but with other cuts. They've actually passed something out of the House. Your Senate hasn't passed anything.
They passed it last year, Chris, but they've not put anything. There's a new Congress now. Those bills have no effective law now.
I know, but you never passed anything.
And we are dealing with this in Well, we will vote on something this week, and it will be a balanced approach. It will do both spending cuts, and it will close some loopholes, some really important loopholes that need to be closed, just from a sense of fairness in our tax code.
Okay, we're going to pick up on that in a second, but I want to go back to what Senator Coburn said, because the president says all kinds of terrible things are going to happen if these triggers, if these sequester cuts kick in. Take a look.
Are Republicans in Congress really willing to let these cuts fall on our kids' schools and mental health care just to protect tax loopholes for corporate jet owners?
Senator Coburn, is the president exaggerating the impact of these cuts?
Absolutely, and you see the typical set up a straw man. Look, the federal government's twice the size it was 11 years ago. We're spending almost $4,000 per person per year coming out of the federal government, $12,000. The average family is on the hook for unfunded liabilities in excess of $750,000 per family. And what sequestration is, it's a terrible way to cut spending. I don't disagree with that. But to not cut 2.5% out of the total budget over a year when it's twice the size it was 10 years ago, give me a break. The American people, we see all these claims about what a tragedy is going to be. The great example is if the Secretary of Transportation can assure us that all the planes are going to be safe, then the Department of Homeland Security can assure us that we can get through the airports on time. They have plenty of flexibility in terms of discretion on how they spend money. There's easy ways to cut this money that the American people will never feel. What you hear is an outrage because nobody wants to cut spending, except and it will be somewhat painful. But not cutting spending is going to be disastrous for our country.
Let me pick up with Senator McCaskill, because as you just heard, Republicans say the problem is that the president isn't serious about cutting spending. Senator McCaskill, let's watch.
House Republicans have already passed two bills to replace the president's sequester. So the question is, why won't he work with us? And the answer, quite simply, is because he wants higher taxes.
Now, I know you talk about a balanced approach, but clearly the Republicans aren't going to agree to that. Not saying who's right or who's wrong. But Senator McCaskill, Republicans are talking about passing something this week that would give agencies, give departments more flexibility to set priorities so that the cuts could be made according to what makes sense and what doesn't make sense instead of across the board. You have supported this idea, but the White House opposes transfer authority. What sense does that make?
Well, here's really what's going on. You have, as usual in Washington, a large kabuki going on about who can get blamed. There's no question that these cuts are going to be painful and they are thoughtless. And I know Tom Coburn and I agree on that. We also agree we need to do more spending cutting. We've got to cut more spending. We agree on that. So why is it that we can't come to the table and agree what cuts need to happen? That's what we should be doing. We shouldn't be passing the blame to the executive branch or saying this is Obama's sequester. The Republicans supported this. I supported it. We need to come together and make the right cuts. And frankly, Ash Carter at the Department of Defense said even if we did some kind of flexibility move at the 11th hour, it's too little too late in terms of what they've got in motion at the Department of Defense.
I understand that, but you're clearly...
We need to come together for a big deal.
Wait, but Senator
Chris,
McCaskill...
I want to jump in, but...
Well, let me just ask this question. Senator Coburn, let me just ask Senator McCaskill this question. You're not going to get an agreement on these cuts in the next 5 days. The sequester is going to go through, so the question is, why not give agency heads more flexibility so they can decide, I'm going to cut more of this and less of that?
Well, I think right now, the way this is set up, there are going to be cuts a lot of places, and there will be some flexibility. And I think we're going to look at a number of things this week. But it doesn't take away the real need we have. And I know Tom Coburn agrees with me on this. We've got a much bigger problem down the line in terms of reducing our debt than just what we face this week. So why not take the offer, the very specific offer the president has on the table that does cut some entitlements, that does do more in terms of looking at a long-term debt, and let's get a big deal. Let's fund the government. Let's quit careening from crisis to crisis that, frankly, hurts confidence of investors across this country and hurts our economy.
Senator Coburn?
Well, I think, first of all, the crisis is made up. It's been created. I didn't support the sequester because that's a stupid way to cut spending. And I didn't support increasing the debt limit because there is no such thing as a debt limit in this country because we always raise it. But the fact is we have tons, hundreds of billions of dollars of fat and waste and excess in the federal government, and we ought to be about cutting some of it out. You're seeing a political game go. There's no reason that we don't go on and cut spending, even across the sequestration. Some of it's not smart, but it's the only way Washington, Republicans and Democrats, you're ever going to get out of both parties some spending cuts. And the reason there's no agreement is because there's no leadership from the president on actually recognizing what the problem is. And the problem is an excessive, bloated, big federal government that's highly inefficient and highly ineffective.
Senator McCaskill, isn't there a danger here for Democrats that this is not a cliff? This is not like the debt ceiling where we immediately go into default. As Senator Coburn pointed out, it's only going to be about $44 billion of cuts in the rest of this fiscal year, and they are going to happen rather slowly. Isn't there a danger for Republicans? People won't feel the pain, and they'll say, you know what, we can shrink the size of government.
Well, I think that there's several dangers that are looming. The biggest danger is that we've got a dysfunctional Congress that can't compromise. I'm proud to be part of the moderate middle. I'm happy to work with Tom Coburn, and we have worked on ways to make our government more responsible to taxpayers. But that's really at the heart of this, Chris. You've got some loopholes. Right now, a guy making $3 million at one end of the hall, managing a hedge fund, pays 20%, and the guy at the other end of the hall making $3 million, managing an insurance company, pays north of 35%. That's dumb. We need to fix these things. We need to come together in the moderate middle, have a balanced approach that fixes some of these loopholes, gains some revenue, but continue to focus on getting at that waste that Tom Coburn and I agree about.
We're beginning to run out of time. I want to talk about a couple of other issues. The nomination of Chuck Hagel to be Defense Secretary comes up this week. Senator McCaskill, you're a member of Armed Services. You voted for Hagel in committee. I want to play one of a number of rocky moments he had during his hearing.
I support the president's strong position on containment. I've just been handed a note that I misspoke and said I supported the president's position on containment. If I said that, it meant to say that obviously his position on containment, we don't have a position on containment.
Just to make sure your correction is clear, we do have a position on containment, which is that we do not favor containment.
Senator McCaskill, during that hearing, Senator Hagel also said that Iran has a, quote, elected, legitimate government. Just on the question of competence, just on the question of knowledge, do you really have no second thoughts about Chuck Hagel as Secretary of Defense?
The president was just reelected by the American people, and he has selected a man who is very qualified to be Secretary of Defense. His resume from his time as an enlisted soldier, fighting in a war with great bravery and decoration, to running the USO, to serving on a variety of different important bodies that deal with national defense policy. The president wants him in the room as he's making important decisions. There's no question about his integrity or his character. I think the president deserves to have the cabinet he wants as long as the person is qualified, and there's no question of how strong his character and integrity are. I think it's unfortunate, some of the things that... did he have the best day that day? Of course not. It wasn't a great performance in front of the committee. But having said that, he's qualified. I think it's despicable the way his character has been impugned by some people through innuendo and inference without a shred of evidence.
I'm not impugning his character. I'm just impugning his competence.
No, but Senator Cruz
or questioning his competence, to put more properly. I mean, I know what the administration's policy is on prevention. You know it. He didn't.
Well, I think he misspoke the way he said it, and should he be disqualified after a lifetime of service and a resume that clearly supports this position? Should he be disqualified because he wasn't as articulate in the committee as he should have been? I don't think he should be, and I think it's time for us to come together and unite behind him so he can do the best job possible keeping our country safe.
Senator Coburn, we're running out of time. I got to ask you two quick questions. First of all, you're one of 15 Republican senators who sent a letter to the president this week asking him to pull the nomination. Having said that, we have Senator Shelby, Senator McCain saying they are no longer going to block his nomination. Do you agree that Hagel will be confirmed this week?
Yeah, he might be, but the danger for our country and the lack of leadership by the president is recognizing that he doesn't have the confidence of the vast majority of the Senate, which weakens him in that position. I like Chuck Hagel as an individual, but the fact is it's in modern times we haven't had one defense secretary that's had more than 3 votes against him. And you're going to have 40 votes against him or 35 votes. And that sends a signal to our allies as well as our foes that he does not have broad support in the U.S. Congress, which limits his ability to carry out his job.
And finally, Senator Coburn, a bipartisan group of senators is reportedly close to a deal to greatly expand background checks of almost all gun sales, but the holdup is the question of whether or not the government should keep records of those sales. Question, you're a member of this group. How close are you to a deal, and what's the problem with keeping records?
Well, I don't think we're that close to a deal, and there absolutely will not be record keeping on legitimate, law-abiding gun owners in this country. And if they want to eliminate the benefits of actually trying to prevent the sales to people who are mentally ill and to criminals, all they have to do is create a record keeping, and that will kill this bill. So if you really want to improve it, you have to eliminate the record keeping and give people the right and the responsibility to do the right thing, and that's check on the next list to make sure you're not selling a gun to somebody who is in one of those 2 categories.
Senator McCaskill, Senator Coburn, we want to thank you both so much. Thanks for joining us today. And we will be counting down to the Friday deadline for those big spending cuts. Thank you both. Up next, 2 governors tell us what